Chapter 12, Part A, The Power of Precision. Human language is like a cracked kettle on which we beat out tunes for bears to dance to, when all the time we are longing to move the stars to pity. Gustave Flaubert. Think of a time when you heard words that seemed like magic. Maybe it was a public event, like Martin Luther King Jr.'s I Have a Dream speech. Maybe it was the words of your father or mother or a special teacher. We can all remember moments when someone spoke with so much force and precision and resonance that the words stayed with us forever. Words are the most powerful drug used by mankind, Rudyard Kipling once said. We can all think of times when words did seem to have that magical, intoxicating quality. When John Grinder and Richard Bandler studied successful people, they found many common attributes. One of the most important was precise communication skills. A manager has to manage information to be successful. Bandler and Grinder found that the most successful managers seemed to have a genius for getting to the heart of information rapidly and communicating to others what they had learned. They tended to use key phrases and words that conveyed their most important ideas with great precision. They also understood that they did not need to know everything. They distinguished between what they needed to know and what they didn't need to know, and focused on the former. Bandler and Grinder also observed that outstanding therapists like Virginia Satir, Fritz Perls, and Dr. Milton Erickson used some of the same phrases that many times enabled them to get immediate results with patients in 1 or 2 sessions instead of 1 or 2 years. There is nothing surprising in what Bandler and Grinder found. Remember, we've learned that the map is not the territory. The words we use to describe experiences aren't the experiences. They're just the best verbal representation we can come up with. So it stands to reason that one of the measures of success is how accurately and precisely our words can convey what we want, how closely our map can approximate the territory. Just as we all can remember times when words moved us like magic, we can also remember times when our communication went utterly, hopelessly awry. Maybe we thought we were saying one thing, but the other person got the opposite message. So just as precise language has the ability to move people in useful directions, sloppy language can misdirect them. If thought corrupts language, language can also corrupt thought, wrote George Orwell, whose 1984 is based on just that principle. In this chapter, we're going to learn about tools that will help you communicate with more precision and effectiveness than you may have ever had before. You're going to learn how to guide others toward the same outcome. There are simple verbal tools that any of us can use to cut through the verbal fluff and distortion most of us are caught up in. Words can be walls, but they can also be bridges. It's important to use words to link people rather than divide them. In my seminars, I tell the people there that I'm going to show them how to get whatever they want. In fact, I tell them to write just that at the top of a piece of paper, how to get whatever I want. And after I go through a big long build-up, I give them the magic formula, how to get whatever you want. Ask, I say. End of lecture. Am I kidding? No. When I say ask, I don't mean whine or beg or complain or plead or grovel. I don't mean expect a handout or a free lunch or an act of charity. I don't mean expect someone else to do your work for you. What I mean is learn to ask intelligently and precisely. Learn to ask in a way that helps you both define and achieve your outcome. In the last chapter, you began to learn to do that when you formulated the specific outcomes, goals, and activities you wanted to pursue. Now you need some more specific verbal tools. There are 5 guidelines for asking intelligently and precisely. 1. Ask specifically. You must describe what you want, both to yourself and to someone else. How high, how far, how much, when, where, how, with whom. If your business needs a loan, you'll get it if you know how to ask. You won't get it if you say, we need some more money to expand into a new product line. Please lend us some. You need to define precisely what you need, why you need it, and when you need it. You need to be able to show what you'll be able to produce with it. In our goal-setting seminars, people always say they want more money. I hand them a couple of quarters. They asked and they received, but they didn't ask intelligently, so they didn't get what they wanted. 2. Ask someone who can help you. It's not enough to ask specifically. You must ask specifically of someone who has the resources, the knowledge, the capital, the sensitivity, or the business experience. Let's say you're having trouble with your spouse. Your relationship is falling apart. You can pour out your heart. You can be as specific and as honest as is humanly possible. But if you seek help from someone who has as pitiful a relationship as you do, will you succeed? Of course not. Finding the right person to ask brings us back to the importance of learning how to notice what works. Anything you want, a better relationship, a better job, a smarter program for investing your money, is something someone already has, or something someone already does. The trick is to find those people and figure out what they do right. Many of us gravitate toward barroom wisdom. We find a sympathetic ear and expect that to translate to results. It won't unless the sympathy is matched by expertise and knowledge. 3. Create value for the person you're asking. Don't just ask and expect someone to give you something. Figure out how you can help him first. If you've had a business idea and need money to pull it off, one way to do it is to find someone who can both help and benefit. Show him how your idea can make money for you and for him as well. Creating value doesn't always have to be that tangible. The value you create may only be a feeling, or a sensibility, or a dream, but often that's enough. If you came up to me and said you needed $10,000, I'd probably say, so do a lot of other people. If you said you needed the money to make a difference in people's lives, I might begin to listen. If you specifically showed me how you wanted to help others and create value for them and yourself, I might see how helping you could create value for me as well. 4. Ask with focused, congruent belief. The surest way to ensure failure is to convey ambivalence. If you aren't convinced about what you're asking for, how can anyone else be? So when you ask, do it with absolute conviction. Express that in your words and your physiology. Be able to show that you're sure of what you want, you're sure you'll succeed, and you're sure you will create value, not just for you, but for the person you're asking as well. Sometimes people do all four perfectly. They ask specifically, they ask someone who can help them, they create value for the person they're asking, they ask congruently, and even after that, they don't get what they want. The reason is they didn't do the fifth thing. They didn't ask until. That's the fifth and most important part of asking intelligently. 5. Ask until you get what you want. That doesn't mean asking the same person. It doesn't mean asking in precisely the same way. Remember, the ultimate success formula says you need to develop the sensory acuity to know what you're getting, and you have to have the personal flexibility to change. So when you ask, you have to change and adjust until you achieve what you want. When you study the lives of successful people, you'll find over and over again that they kept asking, kept trying, kept changing, because they knew that sooner or later they would find someone who could satisfy their needs. What's the hardest part of the formula? For many people, it's the part about asking specifically. We don't live in a culture that puts a great premium on precise communication. It may be one of our biggest cultural failings. Language reflects a society's needs. An Eskimo has several dozen words for snow. Why? Because to be an effective Eskimo, you have to be able to make fine distinctions between different kinds of snow. There is snow you can fall through, snow you can build an igloo out of, snow you can run your dogs in, snow you can eat, snow that's ready to melt. I'm from California. I practically never see snow, so the one word I have for it is enough for me. Many phrases and words used by people in our culture have little or no specific meaning. I call these generalized, non-sensory-based words fluff. They're not descriptive language. They're more like vague guesswork. Fluff is Mary looks depressed, or Mary looks tired, or even worse, Mary is depressed, or Mary is tired. Specific language is, Mary is a 32-year-old woman with blue eyes and brown hair who is sitting to my right. She's leaning back in her chair, drinking a Diet Coke, with her eyes defocused and her breathing shallow. It's the difference between giving accurate descriptions of externally verifiable experience and making guesses about what no one can see. The speaker has no idea what's going on in Mary's mind. He's taking his map and assuming he knows what her experience is. There is no expedient to which a man will not go to avoid the real labor of thinking. Thomas Edison. Making an assumption is the mark of a lazy communicator. It's one of the most dangerous things you can do in dealing with others. A good example is 3 Mile Island. According to a report in the New York Times, many of the problems that led to the accident that shut down the nuclear plant had already been outlined in staff memorandums. As company officials later admitted, they'd all assumed someone else was dealing with the matter. Instead of taking the direct steps to ask who specifically was responsible and what specifically was being done, they'd assumed someone, somewhere, was taking care of things. The result was one of the worst nuclear accidents in American history. Much of our language is nothing more than wild generalization and assumption. That sort of lazy language can suck the guts out of real communication. If people tell you with precision what specifically is bothering them, and if you can find out what they want instead, you can deal with it. If they use vague phrases and generalizations, you're just lost in their mental fog. The key to effective communication is to break through that fog, to become a fluff buster. There are countless ways we sabotage real communication by using lazy, overgeneralized language. If you want to communicate effectively, you have to be attuned to fluff when it pops up and know how to ask questions to gain specificity. The purpose of precision in language patterns is to find out as much useful information as possible. The closer you are to getting a full representation of the other person's internal experience, the more you can affect change. One way to deal with verbal fluff is the precision model. It may best be pictured on your 2 hands. Take a few minutes to memorize the diagram. Take your hands one at a time and move them up and to the left of your eyes so that your eyes are in the position to best visually store this information. Look at your fingers one at a time and say the words over and over again. Then go to the next finger and the next until you've memorized one hand. Then do the same for the other. Repeat this process with all your fingers, looking at the phrase and fixing it clearly in your mind. After you've done that, see if you can look at any finger and immediately think of the word or phrase at the end of it. Work on memorizing the chart until the associations are automatic. Now that you have those words and phrases installed in your mind, here's what they mean. The precision model is a guide to overcoming some of the most common pitfalls in language. It's a map of some of the most pernicious wrong turns that people often take. The idea is to notice them when they pop up and redirect them in a more specific direction. It provides us with the means to qualify people's distortions, deletions, and generalizations while still maintaining a rapport with them. Chapter 12, Part B. Let's start with the pinkies. On the right hand, you should have the word universals. On the left, the words all, every, never. Universals are fine when they're true. If you say that every person needs oxygen or all the teachers in your son's school have graduated from college, you're just conveying facts. But more often, universals are a way of soaring into the fluff zone. You see a bunch of noisy kids on the street and you say, kids today have no manners. One of your employees messes up and you say, I don't know why I pay these people. They never work. In both cases, and for much of the time we use universals, we've gone from a limited truth to a general untruth. Maybe those kids were noisy, but not all kids are ill-mannered. Maybe a particular employee seems incompetent, but not all are. So the next time you hear a generalization like that, simply go to the precision model. Repeat the statement, emphasizing the universal qualifier. All kids are ill-mannered? Ask yourself, all? Well, I guess not. Just these particular kids. Your employees never work? Your question, never? Well, I guess that's not true. This one guy sure screwed up, but I can't say that's true for the rest of them. Now bring the next two fingers together and examine the restrictive words should, shouldn't, must, can't. If someone tells you he can't do something, what signal is he sending to the brain? A limiting one that makes sure, in fact, that he can't do it. If you ask people why they can't do something or why they have to do something they don't want to do, they usually have no shortage of answers. The way to break that cycle is to say, what would happen if you were able to do that? Asking that creates a possibility they were previously unaware of and gets them to consider the positive and negative byproducts of the activity. The same process works for you in internal dialogue. When you say to yourself, I can't do that, the thing to do next is ask yourself, what would happen if I could? The reply would be a list of positive, enabling actions and feelings. It would create new representations of possibility and thus new states, new actions, and potentially new results. Just asking yourself that question will begin to change your physiology and your thinking to make it more possible. In addition, you could ask, what prevents me from doing this now? And thereby become clear about what specifically you need to change. Now go to your middle fingers, which stand for verbs, and ask, how specifically? Remember, your brain needs clear signals to operate efficiently. Fluffy language and fluffy thought dull the brain. If someone says, I feel depressed, he's just describing a stuck state. He's not telling you anything specific. He's not giving you any information you can work with in a positive way. Break the stuck state by breaking through the fluff. If someone says he's depressed, you need to ask him how specifically he's depressed. What specifically is causing him to feel that way? When you get him to be more specific, you often must move from one part of the precision model to another. So if you ask the person to be more specific, he may say, I'm depressed because I always mess up on the job. What's the next question? Is the universal true? It's not likely. So you would ask, you always mess up on your job? Most likely, the answer will be, well, no, not always, I guess. By breaking through the fluff, by getting to specifics, you're on the road to identifying a real problem and dealing with it. What usually happens is that a person has messed up in some small way and made it symbolize some big failing that exists only in his mind. Now put your index fingers together, the ones that represent nouns and who specifically, what specifically. Whenever you hear nouns, people, places, or things, in any generalized statement, respond with a phrase that includes who specifically. It's precisely what you did with the verbs, going from unspecified fluff to the real world. You can't work with a generalized cloud that only exists in someone's head. You can deal with the real world. Unspecified nouns are one of the worst kinds of fluff. How often have you heard someone say, they don't understand me, or they're not going to give me a fair chance? Well, just who specifically are they? If it's a big organization, there's probably one person who's going to make a decision. So instead of getting yourself stuck in this vague realm where they don't understand, you need to find a way to deal with the real world person making the real world decisions. Using an unspecified, nameless they can be the worst sort of cop-out. If you don't know who they are, you feel helpless and unable to change your situation. But if you focus on specifics, you can regain control. If someone says, your plan just won't work, you need to find out what specifically they have a problem with. A rebuttal like, yes, it will work, will not maintain the rapport or resolve the situation. Often, it's not the whole plan, it's a small part of it. If you try to rearrange your whole plan, you're like a plane flying without radar. You might fix everything, but the one thing that's the problem. If you specify where the problem is and deal with it, you're on the road to bringing about valuable change. Remember, the closer the map approximates a real territory, the more valuable it is. The more you can discover what the territory is made of, the more power you have to change it. Now press your thumbs together for the last part of the precision model. One thumb says, too much, too many, too expensive. The other says, compared to what? When we say too much, too many, too expensive, we're using another form of deletion. Often it's based on an arbitrary construct that's lodged somewhere inside our brain. You might say that more than a week's vacation is too much time away from work. You might think that your kid's request for a $299 home computer is too expensive. You can step outside your generalizations by making a comparison. 2 weeks away from your job may be worth it if you'll come back totally relaxed and able to do your best work. That home computer may be too expensive if you don't think it will do any good. If you think it's a valuable learning tool, it could be worth many thousands of dollars down the line. The only way to make those judgments rationally is to have valid points of comparison. You'll find that when you start using the precision model, you'll end up using it naturally. For example, occasionally someone tells me, your seminar is too expensive. When I respond, compared to what? He might say, well, compared to other seminars I've gone to. Then I find out what specific seminars he's referring to and ask about one of them. How specifically is that seminar like mine? Well, he replies, it really isn't. That's interesting. What would happen if you felt my seminar was really worth the time and money? His breathing pattern changes, and he smiles and says, I don't know. I'd feel good, I guess. What specifically could I do to help you feel that way about my seminar now? Well, if you would spend more time on such and such a subject, I probably would feel good about it. All right. If I were to spend more time on that subject, would you feel the seminar was worth your time and money? He nods in agreement. What's happened in this conversation? We found the real world, specific points we needed to deal with. We've gone from a string of generalizations to a string of specifics, and once we got to the specifics, we were able to deal with them in a way that solved our problems. It's that way in almost any sort of communication. The road to agreement is paved with specific information. During the next several days, begin to focus on the language other people use. Begin to identify things such as universals and unspecified verbs and nouns. How would you challenge these? Turn on your television and watch an interview program. Identify the fluff that is being used and ask questions to the TV set that would enable you to get the specific information you need. Here are some additional patterns to listen for. Avoid words like good, bad, better, worse, words that indicate some form of evaluation or judgment. When you hear phrases like, that's a bad idea, or it's good to eat everything on your plate, you can respond with, according to whom, or how do you know that? Sometimes people will make statements linking cause and effect. They might say, his comments made me mad, or your observations made me think. Now, when you hear those, you'll know to ask, how specifically does X cause Y? And you will become a better communicator and a better modeler. Another thing to be wary of is verbal mind reading. When someone says, I just know he loves me, or you think I don't believe you, you need to ask, how do you know that? The last pattern to learn is a little more subtle, which is a wonderful reason to give it your attention. What do words like attention, statement, and reason have in common? They are nouns, yes, but we can't find them in the external world. Have you even seen an attention? It's not a person, place, or thing. That's because it actually used to be a verb, describing the process of attending. Nominalizations are words that have lost their specificity. When you hear one, you want to turn it back into a process, which gives you the power to redirect and change your experience. If someone says, I want to change my experience, the way to redirect it is to say, what do you want to experience? If he says, I want love, you would respond with, how do you want to be loved? Or, what is it to be loving? Is there a difference in specificity in the two forms? There sure is. There are other ways to direct communication by asking the right questions. One is the outcome frame. If you ask someone what's bothering him or what's wrong, you'll get a long dissertation on just that. If you ask, what do you want? Or how do you want to change things? You've redirected your conversation from the problem to the solution. In any situation, no matter how dismal, there's a desirable outcome to be achieved. Your goal should be to change direction toward that outcome and away from the problem. Do this by asking the right questions. There are any number of them. In NLP, they're referred to as outcome questions. What do I want? What is the objective? What am I here for? What do I want for you? What do I want for me? Here's another important frame. Choose how questions over why questions. Why questions can get you reasons and explanations and justifications and excuses, but they usually don't come up with useful information. Don't ask your kid why he is having trouble with his algebra. Ask him what he needs to do to perform better. There's no need to ask an employee why he didn't get a contract you were bidding for. Ask him how he can change so you'll be certain to get the next one. Good communicators aren't interested in rationalizations of why something is going wrong. They want to find out how to do it right. The right questions will lead you in that direction. Let me share with you a final point that goes back to the enabling beliefs we examined in Chapter 5, The 7 Lies of Success. All your communications with others and with yourself should stem from the principle that everything happens for a purpose and you can use it to serve your outcomes. That means your communication skills should reflect feedback, not failure. If you're putting together a jigsaw puzzle and a piece doesn't fit, you don't usually take that as failure and stop working on the puzzle. You take it as feedback and try another piece that looks more promising. It's to your advantage to use the same general rule in your communication. There is a specific question or a precise phrase that will transform almost any problem in communication. If you follow the general principles we've considered here, you'll be able to find it in every situation. Every situation, start using your precision model now. In the next chapter, we're going to look at the